Interesting. He wrapped up that update on Hurricane Florence with a comment, as you heard, on U.S. trade and the deals that are still in the works. U.S. is taking a very tough stand, he says, on China with trade, while at the same time, apparently the talks with Canada are going very well. Perfect timing. We have former Undersecretary of State for Economic Growth, and Robert Hormats was also the deputy U.S. trade representative and has negotiated on all kinds of deals with the Chinese. Which one jumps out at you, China or Canada here?
Well, they're really, in a way, linked because, first of all, I think he wants to make a deal with Canada in part for the midterm elections. A lot of farmers want to see a deal with Canada. It's a big market for American farm products and a lot of other products, so it would help him there. But also, if he really wants to focus more on China, it's good to have the Canadian negotiation behind him so that they're linked. But he clearly is now thinking about whether or not he wants to add another $200 billion worth of Chinese imports to the list.
Well, it's 267, really.
But it'll go, it's right, it'll be higher than the 250. So when you add it all up, it's a big number. And he wants to decide whether to do that relatively soon. And if he decides, having Canada behind him makes it easier.
What are the Chinese doing and thinking right now? In fact, the word is that they've gone to the World Trade Organization and they would like authorization from the WTO, which is kind of ironic considering they were made WTO members just about a decade ago, and they've quite frankly broken quite a few rules. But they're going to the WTO to ask for the ability to slap about $7 billion in sanctions on the U.S. for the way the U.S. calculates anti-dumping by the Chinese. I know this sounds kind of wonky, but can you break it down in regular language for us?
There are formulas for determining anti-dumping duties and formulas for determining countervailing duties, which are aimed at dealing with subsidies. And what the Chinese are saying is that in the U.S. calculation on what it will do on dumping, it has exaggerated the number and made it higher than the U.S. is entitled to charge.
Has the U.S. exaggerated?
Well, it's very hard to know. It's an economic calculation that I have not myself done. But there is a formula, and the WTO will have to adjudicate whether the formula was accurately followed or not.
Can you game for us the chances that we'll see a deal with Canada, encompassing it in with the deal that's been struck already with Mexico?
I'd say the odds are improving considerably. There are a couple of issues. One is the agricultural issue, where the U.S. wants some reduction in Canadian products, particularly in the dairy sector. And then there's the issue of dispute adjudication, where the United States and Canada have major disagreements as to how that works. So basically, Canada might give a little bit on the dairy if it can get some compromise on adjudication, which dispute adjudication, which it wants.
As a former vice chair of Goldman Sachs, I want your comment on this. Charlie Gasparino's been reporting that the Chinese are working on a meeting with top bankers. It's almost like, I may be reading too much into this, but doing an end run around the government to try and strike all kinds of deals with banks and to just sort of plow forward with relationships. Do you think that can happen?
I think it probably can. I mean, they've got two very interesting people. The co-chair. One's John Thornton, an old colleague of mine at Goldman, who's been doing a lot of work in China. And the other is Zhou Xiaochuan, the former governor of the People's Bank of China, with whom I worked for a number of years. They're both very able people. They'll probably assemble a very good group of financial leaders from this country. And the Chinese, even before this series of problems emerged, have been willing to be more open for American financial institutions to establish themselves in China.
But is it sort of, okay, strike a deal with China at your own peril? They steal intellectual property. They've been known to do this.
Well, there are two things. One, the financial sector issues are only part of a much bigger set of issues between the United States and China. So the notion of making a deal between China and the financial leaders on a whole plethora of issues is highly unlikely. And second, the U.S. government is the one that has to make these deals. Individual sectors really can't make them anyway. So it can improve the environment, and a number of the financial leaders are very savvy people. Steve Schwartzman, I assume, will be there, a number of others. Jamie Dimon. I don't know who's coming at this point.
Jamie says he's not, but
a representative of Jamie's anyway. But, you know, there'll be serious people from Goldman and J.P. Morgan and many other firms, and BlackRock, Blackstone, etc. They know what's going on in Washington. They have very good connections with Washington. So perhaps the deal that they work on that's not likely to happen, and I don't think they'll even try, really. They're not the right people to make a deal, but they do have insights into what's going on in Washington they can convey, and they can convey messages from China. And I do believe the Chinese want to resolve this, but they're going to resolve it in ways that are, as they put it, win-win, and not make total capitulation to Washington. There'll have to be a deal that both sides come out at least feeling good about.
Bob Hormats, great to have you.
Good to be here.
You cover a lot of bases with your background. Good to see you,
We've gone across the board, North America to China and back.
We'll take it. Thank you, Bob, very much.